I was helping my wife pack for her business conference when her phone buzzed with a text that said, "Can't wait to finally be together without hiding. Love you." I handed her the phone with a smile and said, "You forgot this." What she didn't know was that I'd been planning my own departure for 2 years. My name is David Mitchell. I'm 41 years old, and I'm about to tell you how my wife of 12 years thought she was playing me for a fool. While I was actually 3 steps ahead in a game she didn't even know we were playing. That text message I just mentioned arrived on a Thursday evening in her home in Charlotte, North Carolina. My wife Sarah was rushing around our bedroom, packing her suitcase for what she called a regional sales conference in Atlanta. The same type of conference she'd been attending with increasing frequency over the past 2 years. "Thanks, honey," she said, taking her phone from me with a quick kiss on the cheek. "You're always so helpful." I watched her read the message, saw the slight flush in her cheeks, the way her fingers lingered on the screen. Then she tucked the phone into her purse and continued packing as if nothing had happened. "When will you be back?" I asked, sitting on the edge of our bed. "Sunday evening, probably around 8, she replied, folding a dress I'd never seen her wear to any actual business meeting. "You know how these corporate things drag on." I nodded sympathetically. "Well, don't work too hard. I'll miss you." She smiled that practiced smile I'd been seeing more often lately. "Miss you too, babe." What Sarah didn't know was that there was no regional sales conference. I'd confirmed that 6 months earlier with a single phone call to her company's HR department, posing as a vendor looking to book exhibition space at upcoming corporate events. They were very helpful in explaining that their company hadn't organized a regional conference in over 3 years. What she also didn't know was that the man she was texting, Kevin Brennan, a divorced personal trainer she'd met at our gym, was about to become the least of her problems. Because while she'd been busy planning her secret romance, I'd been busy planning something much more comprehensive. Let me take you back to where this all started. Because the best revenge stories always begin with trust that was slowly, methodically destroyed. Sarah and I met in 2010 at a charity fundraiser in downtown Charlotte. I was 29, working as a financial analyst for a regional investment firm. She was 27, smart, beautiful, and worked in pharmaceutical sales. We had that instant connection that people write songs about: shared humor, similar goals, and what felt like natural compatibility. We married 2 years later in a ceremony at the Omni Grove Park Inn in Asheville. Small gathering, family, and close friends. A kind of wedding that felt authentic rather than performative. Sarah looked stunning. I was genuinely happy, and our future seemed as solid as the Blue Ridge Mountains surrounding us. The first 10 years were good. Really good. We bought a house in Myers Park, traveled together, built careers we were both proud of. Sarah excelled in pharmaceutical sales, eventually becoming a regional manager. I moved to wealth management, building a client base that appreciated both my analytical skills and my ability to explain complex financial strategies in simple terms. We talked about kids, but never felt rushed. "When we're ready," Sarah would say, and I agreed. We were building a foundation first, creating the kind of life that could support a family when the time came. The first crack appeared in early 2022, though I didn't recognize it as such at the time. Sarah started going to the gym more frequently, joining group fitness classes, talking about wanting to get in the best shape of my life. I was supportive. Health and fitness were good goals. The second sign was her increased travel schedule. More regional meetings, more client conferences, more overnight trips that seemed essential for her career advancement. Again, I was supportive. Success required sacrifice, and we were both ambitious. The third sign was subtler, a gradual shift in how she talked about our future. Conversations about starting a family became less frequent. Plans for renovating our house were postponed indefinitely. She seemed to be living more in the present and less in our shared future. But the fourth sign was the one that made me start paying real attention. Sarah began taking her phone everywhere, to the bathroom, to the kitchen while cooking, even to our backyard when she was reading. It never left her sight, and it was always face down. I'm a financial analyst by training and temperament. I notice patterns. I trust data over assumptions, and I plan for contingencies. So when Sarah's behavior started setting off my analytical instincts, I decided to do what I do best. I started gathering information that I began with simple observations. Sarah's business trips became more frequent twice a month instead of once. A quarter. She bought new clothes but didn't wear them around me. She started working out with a personal trainer at our gym, someone she mentioned casually, but whose name kept coming up in conversation. Then I moved to discreet verification. I called her hotel on one of her business trips, claiming to be her husband with an emergency. The desk clerk was very helpful in explaining that Mrs. Mitchell had checked out the previous morning. Though Sarah had told me she wouldn't be home until evening, that's when I made the decision that would change everything. I hired a private investigator. James Crawford was a former police detective who specialized in domestic investigations. Professional, discreet, and thorough. I met him at a coffee shop in South End and explained my suspicions without emotion or drama. Just facts and patterns that didn't add up. "How long do you want me to observe?" he asked. "As long as it takes to get clear answers," I replied. "But I want everything documented. If my suspicions are correct, I want evidence that will hold up in court." Crawford's first report arrived 2 weeks later. Sarah wasn't attending business conferences. She was spending her business trips at Kevin Brennan's apartment across town. The personal trainer from our gym was indeed personal, just not in the way I'd been led to believe. But Crawford's investigation also revealed something more important. This wasn't a recent development. Phone records showed regular communication between Sarah and Kevin dating back over 18 months. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, even a weekend getaway to Kiowa Island that had supposedly been a solo wellness retreat. My wife hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She'd been systematically lying to me for a year and a half while I'd been planning our future together. That night, I sat in my home office surrounded by Crawford's evidence and made a decision that probably saved my sanity. I wasn't going to confront Sarah immediately. Instead, I was going to plan that over the next several months. I quietly began restructuring our financial life. I opened separate accounts, transferred assets that were legally mine, and began documenting everything Sarah didn't know I knew. I consulted with divorce attorneys, researched North Carolina's equitable distribution laws, and prepared for a legal separation that would protect my interests. I also did something that might sound cold, but felt necessary. I detached emotionally. I stopped seeing Sarah as my wife and started seeing her as someone who was actively deceiving me while planning a future that didn't include me. It was surprisingly liberating. The key to my strategy was timing. Sarah clearly wasn't ready to leave our marriage. She was having her affair while maintaining the financial security and social status of being married. I decided to let her continue thinking she was in control while I prepared for the inevitable. Hired a forensic accountant to audit our finances. I had our house appraised. I even retained a private investigator to continue monitoring Sarah's activities, not out of obsession, but to ensure I had current documentation when the time came to file for divorce. During this period, I maintained the facade of our marriage perfectly. I was the supportive husband, the understanding partner who didn't question her travel schedule or her new fitness routine. Sarah had no idea that I knew about Kevin, about the lies, about any of it. The most difficult part wasn't the deception. It was watching her deceive me. Every business trip, every late-night text session, every time she came home and kissed me hello after spending the weekend with another man. But I'd made my choice to wait, and I was committed to seeing it through. 6 months into my private investigation, Sarah's behavior began to change again. She became more careless, more confident. The business trips became longer. She started hinting about needing space to focus on her career. She even suggested I might want to consider that promotion opportunity in Denver I'd mentioned months earlier. She was preparing to end our marriage, but she wanted me to be the one to leave. That's when I realized Sarah's plan was more sophisticated than simple adultery. She wanted to keep our house, our social circle, and our shared financial assets, while positioning herself as the abandoned wife whose husband chose career over family. It was actually impressive, in a sociopathic way. But I had advantages Sarah didn't know about. While she'd been planning her exit strategy, I'd been planning mine. And mine was better. The moment I described in the opening, handing her the phone with that revealing text message, came 22 months after I'd first hired Crawford. By then, I had documented evidence of the affair, complete financial records, and a legal strategy that would protect my interests regardless of how Sarah chose to play her hand. The next morning, after Sarah left for her conference, I drove to my attorney's office and filed for divorce. The papers were served to Sarah in Kevin's apartment that afternoon while she was supposed to be attending corporate meetings in Atlanta. Crawford's final surveillance report documented her reaction when she realized her carefully constructed lies had completely collapsed. Sarah called me within an hour, her voice shaking with what I assumed was a mixture of panic and rage. "David, what the hell is this? A process server just handed me divorce papers. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I replied calmly. "I filed this morning. You should probably read through everything carefully." "But why? What happened?" "We need to talk about this." "We do need to talk," I agreed. "But not until you've reviewed the evidence that's included with the papers. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready to have an honest conversation." I hung up and turned off my phone. The evidence package I'd included with the divorce filing was comprehensive. Photographs of Sarah and Kevin together, hotel receipts, phone records, financial statements showing expenditures she couldn't explain. Everything documented, dated, and legally admissible. But the real surprise for Sarah was the financial discovery. While she'd been focused on her secret romance, I'd been focused on protecting assets and documenting her financial misconduct. She learned that I'd been aware of her affairs for nearly 2 years and had prepared accordingly. Sarah returned to Charlotte 2 days later, no longer bothering with the pretense of business travel. She came to our house, my house, as the deed was solely in my name, and found her belongings packed and waiting in the garage. "You can't just kick me out," she said, standing in our kitchen as if she still belonged there. "I'm not kicking you out," I replied. "I'm dissolving a marriage that ended when you decided to build a secret life with someone else. You're free to go live that life openly now." "David, please, we can work through this. People make mistakes. Mistakes are accidental," I interrupted. "What you did was systematic, planned, and ongoing. You made a choice every day for 18 months to lie to me, to steal from our shared resources to fund your affair, and to plan an exit strategy that would leave me holding the bill for your betrayal." Sarah's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand. Kevin and I understand perfectly. You fell in love with someone else and decided to keep me around for financial security while you figured out your next move. That's not love, Sarah. That's fraud." The legal proceedings took 8 months. Sarah hired an aggressive attorney who tried to portray her as the victim of a controlling husband who had spied on her and violated her privacy. My attorney responded by presenting the evidence systematically, showing that I had documented adultery, financial misconduct, and systematic deception. Under North Carolina law, adultery affects both alimony and property distribution. Sarah's 18-month affair, funded partially with marital assets, significantly impacted the settlement. She received far less than she would have in a no-fault divorce, and she received no ongoing support. The house, which was in my name and had been purchased, with my inheritance, remained mine. The retirement accounts were split according to legal contribution, which heavily favored me since I'd been the primary earner. Sarah's debt from funding her secret life with Kevin became her responsibility alone. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I heard through mutual friends that Sarah and Kevin had broken up. Apparently, the reality of being together without the excitement of secrecy had been less appealing than either of them had expected. Sarah had moved back in with her parents in Raleigh and was looking for a new job after her performance at work suffered during our divorce proceedings. I felt no satisfaction in her struggles. What I felt was relief that I'd trusted my instincts, gathered information instead of making assumptions, and planned strategically instead of reacting emotionally. A year after the divorce, I sold our house in Myers Park and bought a smaller place in Davidson, closer to the lake. I started dating again, but carefully. I'd learned valuable lessons about the importance of consistency between words and actions, about the red flags that appear when someone's life doesn't add up. I also learned something about myself. I'm capable of strategic thinking even in an emotional situations. The 2 years I spent planning my exit from a marriage that had already ended were difficult, but they protected me from what could have been devastating financial and emotional consequences. Sometimes people ask if I regret not confronting Sarah earlier, if I wish I'd tried to save our marriage. The answer is simple. Our marriage ended when Sarah chose to build a secret life with someone else. Everything that happened afterward was just the legal and financial cleanup. The text message that started this story, "Can't wait to finally be together without hiding, love you," was actually a gift. It confirmed what I already knew and gave me the final push to execute a plan I'd been developing for months. Sarah thought she was being clever, living a double life while keeping her options open. What she didn't understand was that someone who's trained to analyze financial risk is also pretty good at analyzing personal risk and planning accordingly. She gambled on my ignorance and lost to my preparation. Today, I'm remarried to a woman who understands that honesty isn't just a nice idea. It's the foundation that everything else is built on. We're expecting our first child next spring, and we're building the kind of life that Sarah and I talked about, but never really committed to. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation or public humiliation. Sometimes it's simply being prepared, staying calm, and letting someone's own choices determine their consequences. Sarah chose deception and lost a marriage that could have supported her for life. I chose preparation and gained the freedom to build something real of someone who chose me back. In the end, everyone got what they truly wanted. Sarah got Kevin and the excitement of a secret romance that didn't have to be secret anymore. I got out of a marriage with someone who is capable of systematic betrayal. And the next time someone texts about finally being together without hiding, it won't be hidden from me.